Welcome back. Now in Iraq, 7 more protesters have been shot dead and 80 others wounded during clashes with security forces near Baghdad's Tahrir Square. This brings the death toll to over 280 since the protests against corruption and unemployment began last month. Medics say 3 demonstrators died from bullet wounds and a 4th was killed when a tear gas canister pierced his skull. 3 more protesters were killed and dozens other wounded in southern Basra city. Police said security forces cleared protest sites in Baghdad and Basra. Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi has called for demonstrators to allow the country to return to normalcy. In a statement, Mahdi said he will announce electoral reforms in coming days. 5 Syrian government soldiers have been killed by Turkish-led troops after intense clashes broke out in northeast Syria. State media says 26 others were injured in the fighting. State media says the Syrian army has taken control of Shuhaifa village in Ras Al Ain area. Earlier, President Tayyip Erdogan said Turkey will not leave Syria until other countries pull out. Erdogan said Ankara will continue its battle against Kurdish fighters until all of them have left the region. Israeli forces have wounded 71 Palestinians during a protest against illegal settlements at the Gaza border. Medics say the victims sustained bullet wounds and tear gas burns. Over 6,000 Palestinians on the Gaza Strip participated in the protests. Since March 2018, Palestinians have been holding weekly March of Return protests on the border. Meanwhile, Israeli occupation forces arrested 2 Palestinian youths. According to Palestine's Prisoner Society, nearly 6,000 Palestinians, including women and children, are languishing in Israeli jails. Iran says Russia and China are the only countries keeping it from abandoning the 2015 nuclear deal. Speaking in Moscow, Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran is considering quitting the JCPOA in the coming months. Araghchi said if the US sanctions are not lifted and EU leaders fail to circumvent the curbs, Iran will have no choice. He said the steps Iran has taken so far by reducing commitments are in accordance with the provisions of the deal. The diplomat said Tehran is still implementing the deal despite being under US economic terrorism. US President Donald Trump says trade talks with China are moving along very nicely. Trump said the United States will only make a deal with Beijing if it is the right deal for America. But speaking at the Joint Base Andrews, Trump said the talks have moved more slowly than he expects. President Trump added that China's supply chain is all broken, like an egg, and Beijing is desperate to make a deal. The US president said there have been incorrect reporting about his willingness to lift tariffs. He said reports regarding the level and amount of tariffs lifted are incorrect. The US will host a NATO chief next week to review Washington's agenda of upping defense spending and equitable burden sharing. Despite growing tensions between the US and NATO, President Trump has been pressing NATO to pay more for their defense. The White House says President Trump will meet NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on November 14. The meeting comes ahead of a NATO summit in London on December 3rd and 4th. Stoltenberg will also meet US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and members of Congress. Earlier this week, French President Emmanuel Macron warned NATO of Washington's lack of predictability under Trump. German Chancellor Angela Merkel rejected the view, calling NATO indispensable. 5 police officers have been killed in an ambush near Oaxaca state in southern Mexico. Authorities say 2 others have been injured in the attack during a regular patrol. In a tweet, Oaxaca Governor Alejandro Murat condemned the incident and ordered an investigation. The drug violence has multiplied in recent years in Oaxaca. Earlier, the mayor of San Jose Estancia Grande and a state official were killed in an armed attack. In Bolivia, police have joined the anti-government protests in 3 cities and marched with demonstrators in capital La Paz. Security forces have started withdrawing support for President Evo Morales after a disputed election triggered riots. The defense minister ruled out a military operation against the rebellious police. In a tweet, President Morales termed the police revolt as a coup. Bolivia has been rocked by deadly violence over opposition claims that Morales rigged his re-election last month. Spain is voting in its 4th general election in as many years to break the political deadlock after a fractured coalition. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced fresh polls in September after failing to form a government. Sanchez's Socialist and Pablo Casado's People's Party are the parties poised to take first 2 position in today's election. Opinion polls show the Socialists are leading but likely to win slightly fewer seats than in April. It shows the People's Party will be stronger and far-right party Vox can become Spain's 3rd largest party. Meanwhile, Catalan separatists are protesting and calling for freedom of 9 jail leaders on election eve. The government has sent additional security forces to the region to make sure today's election is not disrupted. Romania is set to choose its new president today in a highly contested election. This year's election has been overshadowed by a political crisis that saw a minority government installed just days ago. Opinion polls show incumbent centre-right President Klaus Iohannis ahead with around 40% of the votes. It shows the centre-left candidate and former Prime Minister Virosia Dăncilă at 2nd position with 22%. Dăncilă's Social Democrat government was forced to step down after losing a no-confidence vote last month. If no candidate wins more than 50% of votes today, there will be a second round of voting on November 24th. Afghanistan's chief executive, Abdullah has boycotted the recount of presidential polls. In a statement, his party, the National Coalition of Afghanistan, asked its observers to avoid the process across the country. The party said it is pointless to start recounting without sorting out the fraudulent votes first. It alleged there are over 300,000 fraudulent votes that will not be accepted under any circumstances. This comes after the Independent Election Commission asked all observers to attend a vote recounting as early as possible. The result of presidential polls was set to be announced on October 19, but has been further delayed. Sikhs from all over the world made a historic pilgrimage to Pakistan. They crossed through the Kartarpur border to visit one of their religion's holiest sites in eastern Narwal district. More in this report.
The historic Kartarpur corridor to one of Sikhism's holiest shrine is now open. This allows Indian pilgrims rare visa-free access to the site in Pakistan. This comes days before the 550th anniversary of the birth of Sikhism's founder, Guru Nanak.
I'm really happy to be here, and I thank everyone, the authorities.
Being here right at the doorstep, it's overwhelming. Getting this chance it's once in a lifetime, I believe.
Officials say the corridor can accommodate up to 5,000 pilgrims per day, with up to 10,000 able to visit the shrine every day. Pakistani authorities have made special arrangements for their stay.
We've been here for nearly 10 days now. We've been doing yatra all across Pakistan to different gurdwaras, and it's been beautiful. It's been overwhelming. Very, very nice. The whole organization has been great.
The shrine complex has been upgraded for the accommodation of more pilgrims. New facilities include a courtyard, museum, library, an immigration center, and an embankment to protect the shrine from floods. The United Nations has welcomed the opening of the Kartarpur corridor. It said the move will increase sense of inter-religious harmony.
Sikh community from all over the world thanked Pakistan for specially opening the Kartarpur corridor process. Kiran Bhatt, Indus News, Kartarpur Sahib.
In Japan, thousands of people attended a national festival to celebrate the enthronement of Emperor Naruhito in Tokyo. Some 10,000 citizens and 20,000 invited guests attended the festival. The festival came after Naruhito completed his accession to the throne on 22nd October. Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako also took part in a royal parade around central Tokyo. The formal enthronement was postponed to 10th of November due to Typhoon Hagibis. The emperor acceded to the throne in May this year after his father, Akihito, became the first monarch to abdicate in 2 centuries. Congo's military says it has killed 25 ISIS militants over the past 10 days in the country's eastern regions. Operation in charge, General Jacques Nduru, said 7 soldiers have also died since the campaign began on October 30. Nduru said the army has seized 4 ISIS positions around the eastern city of Beni and North Kivu province. The ADF group linked with ISIS has been operating along the Congo-Uganda border for more than 2 decades. Congo is also battling a recent outbreak of Ebola. Regular militant attacks have hampered efforts to contain Ebola across the area. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, 37,000 people of Zongo city are stranded in floods. Authorities say more than 5,000 homes have been affected. They say heavy rains flooded the Ubangi River in northeastern DR Congo, which caused the disaster. Government says thousands of children are among those trapped in floodwater without potable water, medicine and food. Rain-triggered disasters have killed and displaced hundreds across the East African region this year. And we'll take a short break here. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Moving on with the news in detail. 2 people have died after cyclone Bulbul hit between Sagar Islands of Indian West Bengal and Khepupara region in Bangladesh. The authorities said over 2 million people have been evacuated from coastal towns of both countries. The authorities said 1 person was killed by an uprooted tree in Kolkata and another by a collapsed wall in Odisha state of India. In India, 60,000 were evacuated while over 2 million moved to more than 5,500 cyclone shelters. Dhaka Meteorological Department said the cyclone is weakening with 150 kilometers per hour winds. In Australia, 3 people have been killed in bushfires sweeping near Glen Innes, north of Sydney. Authorities say 30 others have been injured and 7 people are still missing in the deadly fires. They said high winds and hot weather triggered the bushfires in the countryside of New South Wales. Executive Director Operations Rob Rogers says more than 1,000 firefighters and 70 helicopters are battling the blazes. The fires have destroyed more than 100 homes and thousands of residents are trapped in their homes. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the fires are expected to expand and cause more damage.
These fires have already claimed 2 lives that have been confirmed, and as the Premier said, we're expecting worse news as the day unfolds. There have been hundreds of properties that have been destroyed, homes that have been destroyed, and as we get access to further areas that have been cut off, we're expecting worse news again.
The Prime Minister has declared emergency in New South Wales and Queensland, advising people to take precautionary measures. Moving on, NASA has unveiled its first all-electric experimental aircraft in the California desert. Adapted from Italian-made model, the X-57 Maxwell has been under development since 2015 and will take a year to test its first flight. More in this report.
After attaching 2 of the 14 electric motors powered by specially designed batteries, NASA deemed that Maxwell is ready for its first public preview. This is the latest aircraft the National Aeronautics and Space Administration has developed over many decades. A newly built simulator allows engineers and pilots to get the feel of the finished version of the X-57.
It's very exciting for us. I know for me and Tim Williams, the other pilot's going to be flying it. For Armstrong to be getting back into the crewed X-plane work is very exciting for us.
NASA X-57 venture includes standards for airworthiness, safety, as well as for energy efficiency and noise.
So there's a number of interesting new markets for electric airplanes. The first one's called urban air mobility, and there's many companies trying to get into this area. So if you think of like an air taxi, imagine a taxi, but in 3D, a vehicle that can lift off the ground and take you around a big city, say 20 to 50 to 100 miles.
One challenge is improving battery technology to store more energy. Due to limitations, the aircraft is envisioned for use in short-haul flights as a commuter plane.
And now let's take a look at what the weather is like around the world. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.